Hey, everybody, and welcome to Time Out with Kevin Gallagher. It's a pleasure to have you here. And we are at the round table. Guest is far away. And as we're always doing now, we are now streaming using StreamYard, and it's been working out really well. And I wish I was doing this sooner because it's a nifty little program. I highly recommend it. And I know they use it over at Comcast. Hey, if you're watching my show, you're watching Time Out with Kevin Gallagher. We're here every Friday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And also, we replay the shows on Monday mornings at 11 a.m. We're right now going out live as we tape this, and we're going out to our Facebook, our YouTube, and Twitch feed for the Truth Be Told Radio Network. You can also hear this show on the Truth Be Told Radio Network every Friday night at 9:05 p.m. for a full hour. You can check it out. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can check out the radio network. You can go to a place like this, which is a little smart speaker. This happens to be the Google Home Mini, but any of them, the Alexa will work, the Apple, if you have a smartphone, for example, like this Android or an iPhone, the assistants are built in. So you just tell it the keyword, the wake word, tell it to play the Truth Be Told Radio Network. You're listening. So, hey, and also you can go to our Facebook page. The show for the Facebook page for the TV show and for the YouTube page for the TV show. This show will be posted there pretty soon. So just check there. And folks, like I said, I'm Kevin Gallagher, and I have two people with me today that are hosts on the Truth Be Told Radio Network. They have a show called Look Up. It's on Tuesday nights Eastern Time at 7 p.m. So just adjust for the time zone that you are in. I'm here this week with Bill and Cathy Farr, and they have a fantastic program. Like I said, it's called Look Up, and they're in really cold, shivery Wisconsin. So how are you guys holding up there with all the cold? Hopefully it's not cold there now. It's beginning to warm up.
We finally had a warmer day, but nice to be with you again, Kevin.
Yes, it's good to see you again. So how you guys doing?
We're doing really good.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Fantastic. And what I wanted to ask you was, why don't you give people an idea about like how you started the show, why, and how long you've been doing it for?
Well, we started by going to a prophecy conference at Prophecy Watchers in Oklahoma. And we met a guy there, Dr. David Snitker, and he has a program on your radio show as well. And we were talking with him about wanting to start some kind of a radio program, and he put us on to you. We contacted you, and you contacted us in just hours, I think it was. And we worked out the details, and it was a little scary at first when we started, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
But we had wanted to start one for about 5 years, and we were looking into getting one of those private licenses, I think it was, through the state.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of things to go through, and because we're in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nothing but trees, it would have involved some unusual antennas that would have cost a lot of money, and so that was kind of scrapped. And then we ran across Dr. Schnitker, and that's what happened.
Yeah, he's been running a show on the network for some time now. He was a associate of the late Doc Marquis, who was a friend of mine for years. Doc had told me about him. I had them on both David and him when they were starting their ministry together in Oklahoma City. So I got to know David a little bit from there. And then he happened to call me up and say, oh, by the way, there's this couple I met from Wisconsin, blah, blah. And the rest is, well, as they say, history. So it's, as Doc Marquis would say, a God thing. It just kind of brought everybody together,
That really was.
And we like to talk, and we talk about these issues on our show all the time between the two of us and with people from our small fellowship. So it just worked out well.
We thought, an hour program, what's so hard about that? Till we started.
Exactly.
It was like, oh my goodness, now what do we do for the next half hour? And but now it's gotten so much easier. Cathy is our editor-in-chief, she has a certain amount of pages, and she has a feel for how long the program will go. And
I pretty much know. And if we're getting to be about 20 minutes away and I see that we have way too much, then, well, we'll just save it till the next time.
Tag it on the next program.
Yeah.
Now, isn't it funny that when you first started, you were thinking, wow, how am I going to fill 60 minutes?
Yeah.
And now it's like, how are we going to cram everything into 60
That's
minutes?
exactly right.
Exactly right. Yeah.
It's funny because you just find there's so much happening in the world right now to talk about.
Well, we constantly pray for new information, wisdom, and
knowledge,
the Lord's guidance. And boy, he gives it all out when you ask for it.
So if I were to ask you, what is your program about? What are the types of things that you really like to focus on? So like Cathy being the editor, let's see if what's going to jump out at you is something that's like look up worthy.
First, end times, the rapture,
yes,
anything that's happening in regard to being in that day and age that we're in, number one.
Right.
Number two, because so much is going on in politics and world news that also relates to end times, then we have a section on political fodder, I called it, and otherwise not widely reported news.
Right.
Yeah.
I kind of felt that we should report things that aren't being reported because of all the crazy political things, and everybody seems to want to center around United States news and politics. So what's really happening outside of this United States?
Well, explain that with Israel. When we found out about Israel being bombed and all that, and the news is blaming blaming Israel and saying that they can't even fire back, even though they're fired upon.
Yeah.
So we didn't know that much about it, but Bill found out more.
Yeah, you do a little digging, and we've got our news sources now, and so we just try to bring news that people aren't normally hearing, and that will be informative and interesting for these people.
And the reason we call it Look Up, two reasons why we came up with that. Number one, we want to be looking up for our blessed hope, for the coming of Jesus, the rapture. But secondly, because we look things up in the Bible when we're on our program.
Yep.
So we always want to make sure we have scripture on any subject that we're talking about.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Now, what are some of the things right now that are catching your eye? What are some of the things that you'd like to share with the people watching right now?
Sure. Well, you know, what's happening in Israel is huge.
Yes.
It actually, some of the news sources say they're on the verge of war, an all-out war. And what happened, it's interesting because Jerusalem was freed in 1967. The Jewish people captured back Jerusalem, even though they were a nation and they became a nation in 1948. The land was still being fought over. And so when they freed in 1967 Jerusalem, now they have this, what they call Jerusalem Day. And they march through the town, the city of Jerusalem with flags.
To commemorate it.
And they celebrate and everything. Well, it just happened this year to fall in the month of Ramadan.
Got it.
So now while the Israelis are celebrating Jerusalem Day, the Muslims are coming to their holy site, which is the Mount, and they're wanting to worship and have their time on this Mount. Well, Jerusalem Day and Muslims, it's kind of like oil and water.
Yes.
Yeah. Although I did come across something interesting in regards to the rebuilding of the third temple.
Right.
And the thing is that I thought perhaps that the Muslim population there wouldn't be too hip on them wanting to rebuild the temple. It's right now, I think, a Islamic shrine or something, if my memory is correct. And they were actually agreeing to bring this about. And part of my gut feeling, and I could absolutely, and I'm not saying don't take this as the gospel truth, just my gut feeling is that the Muslims are looking for their Mahdi. And so that maybe they're thinking if they rebuild the temple, that'll bring about their Mahdi.
Yeah,
that could be.
Well, it's serving a lot of different purposes right now because of that. Israel is ready at any time to build the temple. Apparently, they have the plans, they have cornerstone, they have all the materials ready and waiting.
They have the red heifers, they have the priests in training and the high priest in training. Yes, they're
actually
ready.
There's several red heifers that have been birthed. and they're at an age now where they could be used.
Right.
They're watching them for any blemish because they have to be without blemish or mark defect.
Yes.
And so they've been inspecting them on a daily basis, and they're ready at any time to sacrifice and, have a new temple.
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing because I'm looking at it, and you just look how Bible prophecy just has this interesting tendency to actually come to pass. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, that's what we're looking for. What do we see as far as signs of the end times in the world, in the church, anywhere? And that's really what drives us for doing our program.
Because one thing that I really do believe, and I'll see what you guys think, is that the temple has to be built, because it talks about in the book of, I think it's 2 Thessalonians, that the Antichrist presents himself in the temple as God.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can't have that happen unless there's a temple actually built, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Revelation also talks about a temple where the Antichrist will go into the temple, set up an image of himself, and this image comes to life and then tells everybody they need to worship him.
But that temple can be built within weeks now.
Right.
It really can be.
Yeah.
So we don't need 3 years.
No.
So it could happen at any time.
Right.
That could easily happen.
Yeah.
So one thing I'm looking at, the dog is hearing something. And she's barking. We have her in her little crate, and she's usually pretty good, but she must have heard something. They've had construction and stuff going on around here. So a dog's ears, as you well know, are much better than ours, and she will hear things and look at us and go, "Hey, don't you hear that?" And
right.
we're like, "No, we don't actually."
No.
So if you hear a dog barking, that's our Westie. So okay. But the thing is, I look at these things and I just find it really fascinating to see how these things are coming about. When you talk about the image of the beast and it's coming alive, you look at what we have going on right now with AI technology, with quantum computing. You could easily have something like that, because these are the things that keep me up at night, is where you can take the AI and, for example, you take the silliness that's in something like a smart speaker, whether it's Google, Alexa, whatever, I don't care, pick one. What happens is that AI, you think about it in whatever they have it running in now to run something like this, where you make a request, rather innocuous. But when you have AI being dropped into the power of a quantum computer, that gets kind of creepy. That gets kind of scary. And that's why I think that these guys that are the Luciferians of the elites, they think, well, we can't be beat, because imagine the power of that AI being powered by a quantum computer. I mean, all I'll say for myself is, thank God that you and we have a God that exists outside of time and knows everything. Whereas that quantum computer, no matter how intelligent the AI is still existing in the same time realm that we are.
That's right.
Right. In my opinion, looking at all the technology and everything that's going on, plus you look at the loss of confidence in our politicians and leaders in government, and it's ripe for AI to take over.
Yeah.
And that's the Antichrist.
Right.
Yes.
Because our young people are learning and growing into technology to where they will trust technology more than they'll trust a human being.
Yes.
And so the individual that I think is going to control, because AI, let's face it, even though it sounds like it can think for itself and it sounds like it's a personal kind of being, it is not. A person, when they had that robot that, in the Arab countries somewhere, and they named the robot, and I can't remember the name of it, was a her, I guess. And they were doing this conversation with this robot. But behind the scenes, someone had to type something similar. Now, the robot can pull off of information, the internet, and et cetera, and AI will seem like it's very smart.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, who better to run a country than AI? Because it will be non-biased, a quote unquote non-biased, and it will lead people to, make decisions and whatever. And these people will say, oh yeah, I believe it more than I believe that politician because he lies all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The only catch there though is, the Antichrist wants to be worshiped.
Sure.
So he will not let AI take over for him.
No, he will be in control of AI.
Yes.
And so where he will type in lies, people will trust it because they'll say, oh, AI can't lie, but it will.
Yeah. And you also have the advent of something, I don't know if you've seen this, it's called deep fake.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've seen that. They did a demonstration of it. They can take one frame. And what they did for the demonstration is they took an image of the Mona Lisa. Now, everybody knows this painting where you can close your eyes, imagine that you can see the image of the painting.
Yeah.
With deep fake, they could make it move. They could make it look alive.
Sure.
And that was from one frame. They took a photo of the Mona Lisa and made it look like she was alive, moving around. Her arms are going, her mouth is moving. You don't hear anything, but that's what they can do now. And like I will kind of joke around with my wife sometimes and say, look, anything that they can do in a movie, they can basically bring into reality at this point. Anything that a screenwriter can have up here, they can put onto a movie screen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, remember that, what was it? Holograph.
Yeah.
That guy, he stepped into a box or whatever, and then he was transported to anywhere.
Holographic image.
A holographic image.
And you would not know it wasn't him.
You'd never know. Now, I kind of feel that this is going to be more of a miracle kind of, statue, because people do know how holographs can be manipulated, how these kinds of things in technology can be moved. And I think the statue that he sets up will really actually move.
Yeah.
And it won't be like animatronics or anything like that. I think it's going to baffle people, and they are just going to be in awe over this. And that's where it's going to lead to the worship of the beast or the Antichrist, because
he will do lying signs and wonders.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean this is what we're talking about really, is transhumanism, and this is where they want to merge man and machine.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been a staple of science fiction since you go back to the movie Metropolis in the 1920s.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's been a staple of science fiction. It's been there from almost day one.
Yeah.
And so you hear the globalists and the transhumanists talk about transferring their consciousness into a machine.
Right. Bill Gates wants to upload his brain into the cloud and live forever. That's the bottom line, is they want immortality.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what's driving it for them and not for the masses.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely incredible. You see all this going on, and I don't know if you ever saw a film by the name of Chappie. It came out a couple years ago, and it had to do with putting the mind of a person into a machine to save them.
Oh, yeah.
And so you get the whole thing, and then it looked like this. The film looked like something that it was something else, and then it evolved into this, and I just went, "Oh, mamma mia, not again!" Because it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. You can't get away from it. And like I said, you can go all the way back to the 1920s, I think it was, with the film Metropolis, and you can go and look at that film, which was ahead of its time for its day and time. It was incredible. I think it's silent film, and it was the visuals, everything was incredible. But you can go take a look at it yourself. You can probably watch it for free out on the web somewhere. But,
sure.
You have all that. You have the merging of the man and the machine. But what we're also looking at is we see what's coming in now. We see this huge move that's being made by the globalists. And what you're looking at is the socialism, the Marxism, the corporate state coming in. I got to send you this image, and I wanted to figure out a way I could get it up on the air tonight, but I didn't. But what it is it shows one frame saying, hey, this is what you were taught in school. You move to the right, you're going into conservatism, freedom, and this and that. You move to the left, you're going into socialism and et cetera. But really, that's not true. That really isn't true. That's the wrong paradigm. It shows another graphic below it, which has really the true paradigm, which is when you're moving to the right, you're moving towards freedom. You're always moving in a direction of freedom. When you're moving to the left, you're moving to corporatism, you're moving to fascism and socialism, because fascism is the most extreme form of socialism that you can find yourself living under. It's also the worst form of government you can ever imagine living under. Fascism is where you have the power of the corporation, the power of the government united and fused together. And when that happens, you have absolutely no freedom. We see what has happened in places like Nazi Germany. And when you look at the word Nazi, it was a breakdown of two words, because they were known as the National Socialists. So I will tell people, you know what the word national means? Well, yeah. And so do you know what the word socialist means? Because they'll argue and tell me that Nazism is on the right. No, it's on the left.
Yeah.
It's the worst form of socialism you can live under. So this is where we're headed. This is where they want to take us to. And all societal change starts from the top and works its way down.
And they're trying to do it fast. They're sort of like we heard today. They're leaping over socialism and going straight to communism. And then they'll take it from there.
Well, we've been conditioned for many, many years over this whole thing, even back to the 1900s, et cetera.
I have a little theory about that.
In fact, some of our presidents have tried to, push into our society socialism, but they couldn't quite do it. I believe Woodrow Wilson was the one that incorporated this working for the government. Because we wanted to build our infrastructure. And of course, we went through depression and some of the other things that were going on, before the war. And it was those kinds of things where people were suffering. People were, wondering what they were going to do and how they were going to make money, how they were going to support their families. And so he introduced this socialist kind of program where the government became your boss. And that has continued to be implemented in different ways. And remember, well, even more recent with when Obama was president, you hear, you got those images of that woman running around saying, "I've got an Obama phone." Because they were handing out these free phones and people didn't have to work for them. And of course, now they rely on the government, and who wouldn't vote for that? And so that's where we're at currently is, now Biden wants to hand out all kinds of things. And what our government is doing is printing money. And they keep printing money because, well, they can. But the problem is that where is the money being backed up? There's no backup. And we don't even know if there's any gold backing up our money anymore. And the Fed took over and they became a separate entity, and all these different things that have been implemented have set us up for where we're at right now.
Yeah, exactly. Cathy, did you want to say something?
Oh, well, we talked about this at our program a couple of weeks ago. I had read in the book of Enoch about the fallen angels from Genesis 6. Being in the book of Enoch, it said that they were thrown in the pit for 70 generations. And I said to Bill one time, I wonder if that 70 generations is up. And that had something to do with how technology has increased, how everything has increased. Are they maybe influencing people? Are people possessed? Are they, talking to people somehow? Because we heard Hitler has said he received information from otherworldly places. So I just took a little math and I took 70 generations of 70 years, say, if that's a generation biblically, and it came up to 4,900 years. So when Genesis 6 happened, when the angels went to the pit, was about 3000 BC. Minus 4,900 equals 1900 AD. So I said, I wonder, because a lot of things started happening in 1900 with the technology, even with UFO sightings. Because they're even saying Our Lady of Fatima involved UFO sightings. So I started looking online, and other people, I don't even have names though, feel the same way. That exponentially then, since 1900, technology, travel, pestilences, plagues, and really the worst century, 1900s were the worst century for wars and killing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it kind of makes sense. I mean, some people might think that's far out, but it makes a little sense.
Yeah, it does. And I'll add to that. You'll find very interesting. It says in the book of Genesis that God didn't want to strive with man longer than 120 years.
Right.
Okay, so take that 120, keep that in your mind.
Yeah.
The year Jubilee was every 50th year, correct?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, now if you multiply 50 times 120, you get 6,000.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we're right there.
Yeah.
We're right
Yeah.
there.
Well, and
And-
it's supposed to be 6,000 years. And then the 7,000 year is like the day of rest, the millennial kingdom.
Yeah, isn't that
Yeah.
something?
Yeah. It all fits in.
It all fits
So,
together. It fits
that's
like a
why-
hand in a glove.
Yes, that's why
Really
we have
does.
to look up, because
Yeah.
it can be at any time.
Yeah.
You know,
One
there's
thing that no, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, some people believe that Pentecost time period would be the time of the rapture. And I can understand that discussion and
Right.
that thought, because it was the start of the church age.
Mm-hmm.
I personally think it would be on or around a Feast of Trumpets,
Yeah.
because the Feast
in
of
September,
Trumpets,
October.
yes, the
Yeah.
Feast of Trumpets is the one feast that the Bible, or that the Jewish people say, has no day or hour.
Yeah.
Because it
had
happens,
to do with the light hitting the moon.
yeah, the
and
sighting,
when they
the
first
first
saw that
sighting.
light,
Yes.
Yep.
It would start, and it happened within a 3-day period.
Right. So that sounds plausible. But any way you look at it, it's got to be soon.
Oh,
Yeah.
We say that every week.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, because a colloquialism, if I'm saying that word right, with the Jewish people at that time for the Feast of Tabernacles was no man knew the day of the season.
Right.
Because they didn't know exactly when it was going to start, unlike the other feasts.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Feast
Yep.
of Trumpets. I
Yep.
know it. We've researched it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And you just can't help but think how soon, we pray that.
Yeah.
Come, Lord Jesus,
Oh.
come soon, because of what we're seeing. Did we ever think we would see things this bad?
No.
We did not, even
I
2
did.
years ago.
Yeah.
No. I thought it would get this bad, but not for like another 50 years.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
And when
it
I
has
saw-
been expedited.
Yeah. And when I saw what happened on 9/11, I knew, I'm way too early. This is happening much sooner than I
Yes.
thought it was going to happen, because I figured, we got to get to a point like this. And I'm like, oh man, I thought this was going to happen sometime when I was like 70 or 80, not when I was in my 30s.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this really stinks, because now everything's way ahead. And I'm like, okay, here we go, game on. And what can you do? It's out of your control.
Mhm.
But really, that was the kickoff in my mind, was 9/11, because the new century, the new millennium actually started on June. Here we go. January. Let's get this right. Old ageism here. January 1st of 2001.
I think we're older than you are, so don't worry.
Yeah. It's like, what am I doing here? But
Well, I'll tell you, we've been reading Jonathan Cahn's Harbinger 2.
Yes.
And that has
Tell me about it.
amazing information. The 9/11, which you brought up, it's interesting that he said that particular date has reoccurred throughout history.
Yes.
In fact, the history of the United States, when Manhattan was discovered.
1609 by
right.
Henry Hudson, coming up the Hudson River.
Exactly. Jonathan Cahn said that was 9/11.
Wow.
In that date.
And guess what Henry Hudson established with the Dutch trading company ship that he was on?
Yep.
He established a trading post on the southern tip of Manhattan, where the World Trade Centers are located.
And those were considered trade centers as well. Then he goes on in his book and talks about the Pentagon and how it was established. And when it was established was 9/11.
September 11th.
When it was built.
And so the tip of Manhattan and the Pentagon are hit the same day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible stuff. And the famous speech that George Bush gave a number of years before 9/11, he said the terms New World Order
Oh,
Mhm.
yes.
Right.
George
on
Herbert
9/11.
Walker.
Yeah.
George
George
Herbert
Herbert
Walker.
Walker.
Yep.
We were shocked to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. It really is.
And,
So, you have, some incredible things. I've seen you talk about Jonathan Cahn quite a bit. I
Yeah.
find him rather fascinating myself. And I find, I know how this might sound. I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but I just find the completed Jew, I just find them so fascinating.
Yeah.
And
We
I've
do
been able
too.
to interview a couple of them. And to me, it's just like, wow, this is so cool. And to hear him talk, it's like, because he has the background of the Judaism combined with what I know about the Christ. And it's really cool to be able to sit down and talk to someone like that.
And he's a Messianic rabbi, and he's from the Kohanim tribe, because his last name is Khan, and that's from the Kohanim. And we actually saw him in person.
Right.
And something happens when he prays in Hebrew. Yeah. We saw him. We were in Washington, D.C. a few years ago. Yeah. When he prays in Hebrew, it has the power of the Holy Spirit. It is amazing. Yeah. You get goosebumps.
Yeah. When we were at one of the prophecy conferences by Prophecy Watchers in Oklahoma, there was a Jewish man there who was a professor in a college in Arizona. And he sold a book that had in it some meanings of Jewish words and how they connect into the scriptural words. And it is just amazing. And Jonathan Cahn also, he has a book called The Book of Mysteries. And we've read through that. And the things that he connects with our scriptures, and it brings so much more meaning to our Bibles when we read it. In fact, one particular illustration, Abraham, when he took Isaac to sacrifice him, God didn't just say, take your son and go sacrifice him. The word that's used in the Old Testament is a word that means please. And so God didn't just say, go take your son. He said, please take your son and sacrifice him on that mountain, which, interestingly enough, that mount happened to be the mount in Jerusalem. And, there you have so much connection again with, God using Israel and those kinds of things. So it's, that's what brings the Bible alive when you combine the Jewish language and the Hebrew with what we read.
Absolutely.
You have a Hebrew Bible, don't you?
Yeah.
Or a study Bible.
And I just can't imagine how anybody can read just the Bible without that kind of explanation, because it just makes it so much more impactful.
It gives a lot of information for sermons too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, what people forget is that when the church started, you were talking, Cathy, earlier about the day of Pentecost, when that took place, I mean, everybody there was of the Jewish faith. There was no Gentiles. We don't really see that until we get to like Acts chapter 10 with Cornelius, and you don't really see that. And one thing I talk about with my wife sometimes is, you think about imagine if you were a Roman soldier, you lived your life in like Rome, Italy, completely different than say being in Jerusalem. And you've lived your whole life. You joined the military, and now you're shipped out to this dusty backwater place, right? You're thinking, why am I going to this place? Yeah. Well, now you're a soldier there, and you're patrolling. You're doing your job. And then there's this guy there, Jesus, everybody starts talking about. Yeah. Those guys are watching. They're watching what has gone on. And I'm thinking, what would it be like to be a Roman soldier standing around and watching some guy named Lazarus, who's been dead for 4 days, walk out of his tomb?
Right.
Now you think about it. Cornelius was a centurion. He was in charge over 100 men. So at first, the guys start coming and telling crazy stories about a guy with a withered hand, and the hand goes fine. And they start telling the stories about what's going on and the buzz going on. They're in the streets. Yeah. They're right there. Jesus's ministry was really in the streets.
Yeah.
So they're watching this. And then they're coming back, they're telling the centurion must have been at first like, take Cornelius, I'll pick on him. You're nuts. What are you talking about? You're crazy. And then he sees something with his own eyes. And you got the centurion. I taught on this at our Bible study last Friday. The centurion saying, hey, I'm not worthy for you to come under my roof. He knew who Jesus was. He says, you just say the word, because I'm a man under authority. I take orders and I give them. I understand exactly who and what you are. I know your authority. You just say the word, my servant's healed. I got it. Okay. So the thing is these guys now, he saw enough to these guys. They believed, they realized, wait a minute, there's something really extra going on here. And they became believers. And you have the guy at the temple, even, I don't mean to interrupt, but you have the guy at the temple who was talking about another centurion that was helping fund them to build another place of worship. So it got to a point where they were helping the Jews build temples.
Well, what I like to think of when you mentioned about completed Jew is in order to reach more Jewish people, we need to make that clear to them, because when they see this is them, they were the first Christians. We need that to sink in for the Jewish people to understand that they're not leaving Judaism. They are a completed Jew when they believe in Jesus.
Well, can you imagine, like you're talking about these centurions, and these guys weren't, milquetoast kind of guys.
Not at all.
They weren't wimpy weaklings. These guys were tough. And, as we saw with Herod, when he told them to go in and kill all the 2-year-old and under, I mean, they didn't hesitate.
No.
They went and they killed women, children, whatever they were called to do, they did it. And they were heartless individuals. And here, like the one standing below the cross when Jesus died, and he says, surely he must be the Son of God. That had to have shaken these individuals for them to say that, for them to believe in Jesus.
Right.
Yeah, and think about it. That may have had where he had some prior experience. He heard about this guy, and now he's attending to his execution.
Yeah. Just think about, putting the nails in his hands, and Jesus looking at all these people and saying, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Wow. They never saw that before. They saw people crying for mercy and crying for whatever. And Jesus is pretty much in control of himself and just saying, forgive them, and into your hands I commit my spirit. He's gone. And the soldiers couldn't believe it because that was unheard of too. They would suffer there for hours. But Jesus picked his time and he gave up his spirit. Nobody took it from him.
True.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing, huh?
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Yeah, but these are the things that I'll think about is like these Roman soldiers. What was going on with them? What was going on in their lives? What was because you read about what's in the Gospels, and it's like, can you imagine just being a Roman soldier and being exposed to this for the first time and seeing this and realizing that you really don't know what's going on. You really don't have a clue. And these guys just gotten eyes as big as bowling balls.
Right. And even for those that whipped Jesus and beat him and all the things that they did, that had to make them think, because Jesus, again, he didn't react like normal people. He took the beatings. He was silent about questioning and other things. And Pilate, well, you saw what happened with him. I mean, he's like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And I want to let him go. And these people won't let me let him go. And he washes his hands and says, I'm out of here.
Yeah. And Pilate's wife is having bad dreams. The whole thing. I mean, it's just like, this is not a good deal. We need to like remove ourselves from this whole situation. This is not good, And so, we moved 2,000 years forward into the future where we are now. And we're looking at, the enemy, when you look at it social, economically, it's not socialism. It's not even communism. It's globalism.
Yeah.
We look at what's going on. We're being moved into a global corporate state, and that's where things are headed. And so you know, you're looking at the Pope, you're looking at the move towards a one world religion,
Right.
you're looking at all this stuff. What are the thoughts that you guys have on this? Is a very important subject. This is something we could spend hours talking about.
Right.
Well, I want to say something about the Pope.
Go
since
ahead.
I was originally raised Catholic, but Catholics, and I'm saved, born again. Although you can be if you're a Catholic, but Catholics today that we know and hear from do not believe in this Pope. They see what's happening. They had a conference at the Vatican recently where they thought it was going to be this big thing, and they had very, very few people who were there.
Right.
And this Pope invited people like Chelsea Clinton.
Of all people.
Yes. And he's been involved with the Muslims and Chrislam, and he's pushing the vaccine.
Yep.
He's pushing the vaccine passport.
Yep.
He's pushing globalism. He has said there needs to be globalism. It's unbelievable. We can see that dovetailing now, getting ready for the false prophet.
Well, when you look at, again, what started from the very beginning in Genesis, Satan wanted to take over. Satan wanted to be God. That's why he was tossed out of heaven. And so you go through in the entirety of Scripture, and you see that constant theme throughout, where he's always trying to take over. We, talked about Genesis 6, where, Nephilim were born, and we believe that it was fallen angels that cohabitated with human women and had these Nephilim. Well, this is pretty clear through scriptures, not only our scriptures, but also exterior historical accounts.
Enoch,
Enoch and other books, even rabbinical books talk about it. So we see that, and we wonder, well, what could be the reason behind all that? Well, that's because Satan again wanted to corrupt mankind. Because if he could corrupt,
seed war,
it's a seed war. If he can corrupt mankind to the point where men are no longer human, where people are no longer God's creation, then he eliminates prophecy, because Jesus can't be born. The Son of God can't be born out of that kind of seed, satanic seed. So God, wipes that out. He stops it. He brings Noah out when it says that he was blameless, and that meant that his flesh was blameless, was perfect
pure
DNA, pure DNA. Not that he was a perfect man. So then you fast forward in through history, and you come to even today, and you see the manipulation of DNA is happening. Governments want to manipulate DNA so they can make super soldiers, and
that's already happening.
And that's already happening. China is already doing it, and then France is doing it because they don't want to be left behind. And then there's other countries that are doing it as well.
Well, Satan's goal, not just to corrupt humanity, but he also wants to create some life, some being. He wants to get rid of humans because that's God's. But he wants to be like God in that he wants to have his own race or something to worship him. And
you look at this constant theme, and now, what could Satan be wanting to do? Well, Jesus was already born. Redemption is already here, so he can't stop that. But what can he do? He can try still and stop God in prophetic things. He can try and stop Israel's progression. So the missiles, and, why in the world the Arab nations have 100 times the land that Israel has. That little sliver of land, Israel, and they want to wipe it off the map. Why in the world
that
do they want to do
alone
that?
Proves there's a God and the Bible is true. That right there.
And my opinion too is that the Armageddon battle, the last battle at Megiddo, that's going to be all the Nephilim and the ungodly thinking, because Satan has fooled them into believing they can beat God.
All the genetically enhanced beings, because they won't be human.
And the super soldiers, because there's going to be more and more. They're creating them, and we of course don't know when the tribulation and everything's going to happen, but during that 7-year period, you better believe they're going to be creating super soldiers, just like
and
Captain America.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And
Captain
trying to
America,
kill
etc.
God's humanity.
Exactly.
That's why there's so much killing.
That's why they hate
Yeah.
God's people.
Let me run this by you. I actually thought about this when I was a kid, and thought about it over the years. And that is, here you have Satan, right?
Mhm.
And he is. You read about the Battle of Armageddon. I remember reading about that in the Book of Revelation, and I'm thinking to myself, how does Satan plan a battle against beings that cannot die? And how do you plan to win that battle? So then the answer, I guess, we have to maybe just run on the information that we have, is what you're talking about, the super soldier. So if he can build something that can take a lot of beating and he can go after his enemy that cannot die, because you have the church, when the church returns, there is no second death for those people.
Right.
And you go after them, that's that. The sword goes through, it has no effect. So you figure he's been sitting around for thousands of years trying to figure out how to do that. That's how twisted he is.
Sure. Well, think about it too. If you can't kill them, you want to subdue them into submission. And so then they join you. And you see that in the superhero movies and things, join me, they keep saying, or be banished, join me. And these superheroes are, have the choice to join the bad guy, or, be banished and gone forever. And that really is, Satan's twisted mind in that way.
And also, like the Bible says, if the days were not shortened, no flesh would survive. Satan doesn't want human beings to go on into the millennial kingdom.
Right.
He will try to kill them all.
Yeah.
Well, just like Bill Gates now, he wants to live forever. So he wants to insert his mind and his spirit or his essence or whatever into the cloud. It will be downloaded into technology that will be inserted into a robotic being and therefore live forever. Well,
won't
really?
he be surprised?
Yeah. Won't he be surprised when all of a sudden he dies, and sure, his memories might be in a robot, the pictures of family, and he may even speak like he's in there, but he's not.
Right.
He's ushered into eternity, and unfortunately, it will be an eternity without God.
Yeah. And I saw a comment come up here: Jews that believe in Yeshua are Jewish believers, and that's absolutely 100% true.
You got it.
And part of the church,
and they're great to be around, because I love to talk to them, especially about the Passover and communion and how those merge together as well. It's so
all the feasts.
Yeah. And I just did a show with a completed Jew, and he went through the entire thing with the Passover, with the Seder, and that was so fascinating. And then connecting it all to the Christ, and seeing how the whole thing fit together. It was very
beautiful.
Very cool.
It really is.
Cool.
It makes it so much more meaningful. Now, when I do communion in our fellowship, I explain some of those things. How the matzah is made, and how it's pierced, and how it's striped, and using unleavened bread, and the cup being the third cup, the cup of redemption. It's unbelievable, all the connections with the Passover and communion.
Right.
Yeah, it's very cool. So we're looking at, full bore transhumanism. We're looking full bore going into the socialist Marxism. We're looking full bore going into the globalism.
Yeah.
You have the worldwide church, universal church, the Catholic Church, and all of it is just coming together as some kind of unholy trinity and propelling everything forward. If you ever see the original Rollerball film, that's a film.
I don't know
the original one with James Caan, you're getting a good idea. That movie was made back in the 70s.
Wow.
And they're talking, that was a global fascist state that had risen up and taken control of the world. And this is one of the reasons why I like science fiction, is because you get
We
a
do
glimpse
too.
into,
Yes.
you get a real glimpse into what they have planned, and you can see the product, the product placement, so to speak, and the predictive programming, as it's called, that they lace into the stuff that may not manifest itself for a decade or more.
Yep.
But it's probably been laced in deliberately by the globalists, the Bilderberger Group, all those.
Right. We've been indoctrinated for many, many years, probably 50 or more years. We've been indoctrinated. And it hasn't been this, in your face thing, but it's been little by little by little. Remember when Social Security numbers came out, people freaked out because they thought mark of the beast, mark of the beast. And the government had to take all kinds of steps and advertise and whatever to calm people's fears because, oh, no, it's not it. And look at what we have today. Now they're talking about an inoculation or a vaccine, and they're talking about tracking people. And they're also talking about companies that will not allow you to work there unless you're vaxxed. And then they to follow you because, well, what are you going to have, a passport card? Well, anybody can imitate a passport card and forge one. So now how do you keep that passport card or that number, on that person? Well, you insert it in the person.
Well, what's also devious is the Biden administration understands that people are against the vaccine passport in any way, shape, or form. So they are laying it out for the globalist big business CEOs to take care of it by requiring it for anyone who works at their companies.
And you look at the people who are resistant against it and fighting and pushing back against it, mostly are believers. People who know what this all is going to mean.
And besides the globalism and transhumanism converging, because COVID happened and they used that, either deliberately did it or they used that to kind of bring forward more of their agenda, now we can visualize persecution of the church much more clearly. So both those things have dovetailed now, and we can see it. It's ready for the tribulation to happen.
It's amazing. When you go back to shows like Star Trek, you go to the original one, Gene Roddenberry was a 33rd degree Mason. Most of the guys at NASA were, guess what, 33rd degree Masons, and then you have some of them who were Nazis that were brought over in Operation Paperclip to help set NASA up. Jokingly, NASA stands for never a straight answer. But what the point I'm getting at is that Gene would talk to those guys at NASA and they'd say, what are some of the things going on? He would get ideas so that he could work them into the scripts. And work them into the stories. And you see that today. I mean, you go back, everybody jokes about the fact Captain Kirk opens up his communicator and it looked just like a cell phone from the 1990s.
A flip phone.
The flip phone. But let's take that a step further. You get into shows like The Next Generation. You then have the tablet computer that really looks like a tablet computer from today. You go even further to Deep Space Nine and you have Google Glass or the Alexa glasses, where the guy, the Vorta, is looking at something and can communicate and control the ship just by looking into the glasses. So you have that all the way through.
You're preaching to the choir on those shows. We love science fiction.
That's so true. And again, the technology, where did that come from? Where did they get these ideas? And I did a little study on the Nazi rocket program. And the individuals.
Von Braun.
And the von Braun's teacher was a man who was interviewed, and they asked him, well, how come your program is so much farther ahead of ours? He said, we had outside help.
Exactly.
And he wasn't meaning outside from Germany. He meant
fallen angels,
fallen angel technology.
Yes, exactly.
It's really amazing stuff. I have just a few minutes left
Yeah.
in this program. So what would you like to talk about? What would you like to get out on the air, whether it's about your radio show or whatever, before we go bye-bye?
Well, one thing first, it's our favorite saying right now: normal isn't coming back, Jesus is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We love that saying.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that we're using that because so many people just want it to be normal. So
Yeah.
many Christians are saying, well, why can't we get back to normal? Why can't we just live our lives? Why is this happening? Well, it has to happen.
Right.
For all of prophecy to occur,
Right.
this has to happen.
And, Scripture tells us quite plainly, Paul talking in 1 Thessalonians, saying that he doesn't want us to be uninformed. We aren't supposed to be children of the dark. We're supposed to be enlightened about these things. So we should not be sticking our head in the sand and hoping it all goes away, never listening to news or whatever. Fine. I don't say listen to news all day long, but listen to a good news source, find out information about what's going on in this world, because there's people out there who need to know about the Lord, and they're afraid. They're frantic about what's going on. And we need to be able to say, you know what? It doesn't matter that this is happening or that DNA is being manipulated or whatever is happening at the particular time. We need to focus on the Lord Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
Right. And to have the rapture out there to tell people about,
Right.
because it's supposed to be an encouragement.
Yeah.
We are supposed to encourage one another with that thought.
It's a great way to talk to somebody about the Lord.
I do that all the time.
Kathy will be eating in a fast food restaurant, and somebody comes over and she'll say, "Have you ever heard of the rapture?" And nobody has.
I do it
what?
cold.
What's that?
All the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. It really is. And we're heading down. We're heading down the road that like the Apostle John saw. It's already been seen, and God is already there waiting for us. God is across the timeline. He's bigger than time. He created time.
Yes.
So there's no reason really to be afraid.
Right. The funny thing is all these people want to live forever, and you know what? That's what Jesus promised us, that we would live forever. So why fight with technology or think that you can do it yourself? You cannot do it yourself.
Yeah.
Trust Jesus Christ as your Savior, and you'll have eternal life.
And that's what we try to bring across on our show too.
Right.
We like to talk about all this
Yep.
that's happening, but the main thing is they need to be saved.
Yes.
So our show is on every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central Time on the Truth Be Told Radio Network. And it's called Look Up with Pastor Bill and Cathy Farr.
Yep.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me here this week. It's been a pleasure to talk to you again and talk to you about your show and some of the things that are getting your attention. For Bill and Cathy Farr, I'm Kevin Gallagher, and I thank you so much for joining us here on the program this week. And I really hope you'll be able to tune in again. We do these live things now on a regular basis. You can catch replays of the program on the Truth Be Told Radio Network for this program at 9:05 on Friday evenings Eastern Time. You can also catch the shows when they air on Comcast on Channel 23 in Danbury, Connecticut, and also on Charter. So check those out there. You'll have a great time watching the shows. Tune in to the Truth Be Told Radio Network a number of different ways. TBTRN7@gmail.com, and you can get in touch with me there and get more information. And folks, I thank you so much for watching the program tonight. And I'm Kevin Gallagher, and tune in again next week, next time, to see what it is we'll be talking about. Until then, have a great night. Bye-bye.
Relatives in
All right.
in